Welcome everyone to our latest episode in our learning series at the Lawson Foundation. This week we're going to welcome Sharon Hobenshield, who's the executive director for the Kw'umut Lelum Foundation in British Columbia. I guess more specifically, Ishtimanis First Nation, where they're based. And Sharon's going to talk to us about the foundation and Indigenous community philanthropy.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Sharon.
Simgige sidimgen hanak gobolsis luamp gari nu gayatsum doyak nissim win bexim inu gitsan winsa wethqui aoli wem gitsani Sharon Hobenshield wem Kw'umut lakabu padegai Wilpsmili winsa wethqui and doyak sip simgige dil lawangwin First Peoples, Winnie Willem Lucky Deep. And so, hello, respected ones. I'm from the Gitxsan First Nations on my mother's side, and I have German settler roots on my father's side. I carry the name Aoli in the House of Mali, and I belong to the Wolf clan. And I am honored to be here today on the Lekwungen First Peoples, which is, I'm actually if you heard the chatter before, I'm actually at UVic. So UVic is opening some Indigenous law wings in their law center. So I'm going to be attending an event after this. So they were nice enough to let me come into this little room here. So that's my background. I'm in this little study room. So and I want to thank Jeff and the Lawson Foundation for the invitation to be here. This is my first podcast, so I feel pretty hip because that podcasts are what it's all about. So so that's kind of fun, and and so I have a bit of a presentation I'll go through and just to share a bit about the Kw'umut Lelum Foundation and kind of its roots and what we do. Particularly our approach in terms of the local Coast Salish approach that we're trying to uphold and practice, and then just kind of the learnings and with that work and the challenges, but also the opportunities, and there's a lovely video that hopefully will work that we can show you about halfway through, and then hopefully we can engage in some conversation. So again, thank you for being here. So if we can start the slide, Leanne, I can. So again, this is the Kw'umut Lelum Foundation. Kw'umut Lelum being in Hulkaminum, the Lelum being house, and Kw'umut meaning of raising children. So the house of raising children. So it's really quite beautiful. And I will speak more specifically to the snu-WHY-uth of that. So if we can go to the next slide. And so this is again where we're located. Oops, there we go. Where we're located. The Kw'umut Lelum Foundation is led and governed by 9 coastal First Nations from Malahat. So kind of South Island, as you can see here, to central to Qualicum First Nations. And so these nations are obviously along the coast. They range in size, I think, to Bassett's the smallest, which is a membership of maybe 35, 40, and Snuw'uy'ulh and Ishtimanis being the bigger ones in populations of just hovering around 2,000 people. Penelakut there and Lyaxon, you can see, are even further off the island on their own little territories there. And so the purpose of the foundation is really, to engage with donor to expand access in all that holistic way that we know is so important to our well-being. So, expanding the cultural, the economic, the social, educational, and recreational access, and specifically in support of youth, children and youth. And our belief is that if we invest in children and youth, then that has an impact on the family and then on the community and the broader community. And so our vision there is really around investing in the limitless potential of children and youth. So really coming from a strength-based perspective. And if we go to the next slide, I'll speak a bit to kind of the inception of the foundation. So the Kw'umut Lelum Kw'umut Lelum Child and Family Services there in the blue. That is a child and family services organization. And so the same 9 First Nations have been providing leadership and stewarding that work for close to 30 years now. And interesting enough, my first, what I call my big girl job was with Kw'umut Lelum Child and Families. It was then called Central Island Child and Family Services. And so at that time, 30 years ago in BC, there was the development of all these Indigenous-run child and family services organizations and taking over delegated authority for that work. And so again, Kw'umut Lelum has been doing that work for close to 30 years and has really expanded. Like when I started there, when I left there was about 10 social workers and 10 staff, and now there's over 100. And they've really expanded their work to be, of course, about, really grounded in the culture and grounded in prevention work and support services. And so we grew out of that work. The Kw'umut, I always say we're like the sister organization. And so you can see we've done this to more so for communities, because communities still get us confused in terms of they think we're all one. And so what was happening, that good work, as you can see there in the blue, Kw'umut Lelum Child and Family Services really focused on the direct services to children and family. And so those 9 nations in their good work that they had been doing in the 30 years and the leadership were really committed to ongoing assertion of their inherent rights to define and determine what is best for their children and families and grounded in culture. And so I see that the Kw'umut Lelum Foundation is an extension of that. So we have direct service, and then the foundation's role is to, again, create from that kind of thriving or sustaining and maintaining to a place of thriving. And so again, if you go back to our vision, it's really about investing in that limited potential of amplifying our children and youth so that they can be succeeding in all sectors, in all different communities and capacities. So that really is the vision and the work of the foundation. And so, but I think it's important to make that distinction of the leadership that these nations have shown. So if we go to the next slide. And so this is a bit of our work. We were incorporated in 2020, which again, of course, was those COVID years. So became fully operational. And I think 2021, we really started to put together our governance and our policies. And so that's when I came on board, and that was the first kind of year of the work. And then fortunately had a major gift and were able to start funding. And that's what the communities and the board had identified as we want to be showing the communities that what we can offer and the need is now. And so these are some of our giving areas, community capacity grants, and these were directly to the 9 nations, non-competitive grants that would go to each of the nations for initiatives and programs and services that they defined. And as long as, fit within, of course, the broader mandate of health and wellness. And so some of those programs and initiatives look like a lot of physical activity connected to land and the culture. Again, cultural programs, a lot of traditional gardens, a lot of land-based learning. One of the communities is building carving a canoe with a master carver and apprenticing for youth from the community. And the idea is that community will be used not only for ceremony but for the use of those youth going forward. sports and recreation and culture grant. This is support that we can put right into families, so families can apply to us, and we can up to $1,000 support them to, again, increasing that access to those areas. And this one is super popular. We love it at the foundation because, again, we hear, just hear directly from families who are struggling with the high cost of living, to put food on the table, and also to ensure that their children have access, and recognizing how important that access to culture and recreation and sport is for their, for their confidence and their peer connections and leadership. So we just actually closed that grant, and for the first time, we usually offer up. We have a donor that provides up to 20,000 per year, but this is the first year that we were oversubscribed, and we were close to 30,000, and the board was like, no, we'll find the money, and so. So again, the idea here is that we're growing, and with the community's recognition of the work that we can do and the support we can provide. The financial literacy, this was with the Canada Learning Bond. This was a big initiative across the country, and we were matching funds for that. That grant has since closed because they're doing some good changes, I think, down the road with that, where that funds will be directly put into families who are eligible. And then scholarships, we partner with Inspire, and that's old data there, 20 awards. We just finished, we have 30 awards that we've given. And again, these are young people in all sorts of different programs and activities in university. To the next slide, please. And so because our focus is on youth, it was really important. We're small. We have 3 staff. There's myself, a storyteller, and then a finance admin person. And so, how do we engage the youth in good ways and make sure that what we're doing and the work with the communities is relevant to them? And so again, you've heard me talk about canoe, and these people, these Coast Salish nations are very much canoe people. It's a big part of their culture and their traditions, and historically and generationally. And so they do tribal journeys, and they participate in canoe races. And so in knowing that, we thought, well, let's engage the youth in a photo voice project where we invite them in their participation of that to take photos that amplify kind of what health and wellness looks like, and how that is connected to cultural identity. And so there is a video that we're going to hopefully pull up and show you that speaks to this project and the impact.
Can't hear the sound, Diane. I don't know if you can on your side.
Just give me a sec.
Sure, thank you.
Oh,
There we go.
is it okay now? Oh, oh, hey. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, oh, hey. Hey, 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 oh, oh, hey. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, oh, hey. Oh, oh.
I think it's important because as generations go on, the less they're interested in the culture and it's being forgotten. So I think projects like this are very important because it brings out more understanding and more people acknowledge it. And I think it's very important to know where you're from.
The Kw'umut Lelum Foundation is led by and governed by 9 coastal First Nations on Vancouver Island, from Malahat to Qualicum. And we are the first Indigenous-led community foundation in BC. Our mandate is health and wellness. Our vision is to see these 9 nations thrive by investing through the development of children and youth.
Oftentimes in communities, we have elders and we have people like myself that are in community and teaching, but it's not often that you see youth who are able to take in those teachings and then be able to share it on their own amongst their own peers. And so that was a highlight for me in terms of Indigenous identity that came up. I got it.
The Photo Voice project was funded by Save the Children Canada, and particularly their National Reconciliation Program. And so they approached us with an interest to support youth voices.
The Photo Voice project is a project that was created to gather feedback from youth and young adults regarding the definition of Indigenous wellness and Indigenous identity. It's a project that utilized different Indigenous activities, Indigenous-led activities, to help foster just thinking and defining Indigenous wellness and Indigenous identity.
The history of the confederation began as soon as our colonizers arrived. We found a way to still use our canoes, and that's how the way that we found it. That's where the confederation was born, probably in Victoria. The value for the youth is the teaching, the discipline, the things that they talk about, and what you need to get through it.
Probably just practicing a lot and then getting in time with other people on the canoe. It's a lot of chemistry. Like you have to build like from your family. You can't just go on like out on like other canoes and just like paddle with anybody who you want.
It means quite a bit because I'm going even farther than most people that paddle or canoe. Just show people that it's possible to overcome limits that our people have.
I'm part of the Manat Canoe family. Travel journeys heals people and that it brings people together and that culture helps out way more than people think.
My canoe life role revolves directly around tribal journeys. We take, anywhere from 10 to 15 youth that are in care from the various 9 nations that we work with and build them out throughout the year. We do protocol practices. Those are our song and dance. On Wednesdays, our other program day, we do various art projects. We call it a canoe family, and they really do come together and bond throughout the year.
They start off shy and, not wanting to hang their head. And over the course of 10 days, 2 weeks, they're the first ones running up there to do their protocol and to sing their song or to participate in someone else's community dance. And it's such an amazing thing to witness.
Eat in a Snuw'uy'ulh. Eat in a Snuw'uy'ulh, eat in a Kw'umut. Eat slag and eat in a squallowing. Eat in a moog sweet, eat in a spanam, eat in a CYD. Nihai.
Some of these kids grow up off reserve and not really attached to their culture, and for them to come and participate is truly amazing.
What stood out for me was learning new songs and hearing other people's songs.
My favorite is probably the drumming and dancing. That was one of my favorite parts.
When you create a healthy path for children, you create healthy human beings.
Hey, 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 ho, ho, hey.
Great, thank you. So it was a little glitchy, but hopefully you got the premise there of the Photo Voice project. You know, and I think there's some beautiful takeaways there around, you know, just I think reinforces what we're trying to do. The foundation is really, again, that healthy path, as Uncle Gary said, for a healthy human being. So if we go to, and these are just sort of a few pictures of some of the photos that they took and some of the youth. We did of course, we had a gathering to showcase their youth, and the public library partnered with us and showed their photos for a couple of weeks. So that was lovely. So this is kind of what it led to. The work of the youth and then ongoing conversations with the communities around, you know, again, what does that look like in terms of defining Indigenous identity and wellness? And so this is what we came to as this snu-WHY-uth for success, and snu-WHY-uth being the Hulkaminam name for the teachings of the loved ones and of the elders. And so, and all the communities talk about that, like the importance of you know of ensuring that children and youth have snu-WHY-uth. That's the foundation for which to build upon. And so we talked a lot about that with the youth and what that looked like and the pathway to get there in terms of success being, again, in this modern day world, and again, creating access for education and work and careers and health and wellness. And so the ultimate outcome there, you can see it's a little small, but it's really, again, Indigenous youth walk in two worlds with a strong foundation in snu-WHY-uth. They are fulfilled in their education, their work, their wellness, and family life, and make positive contributions to their communities and all of their relations. And so through that, you know, created these pathways with the conversations with the youth. And you know, this looks, it's beautiful imagery, but there's a lot going on here, and I won't spend too much because we're still, like, I think, determining what this means in practice. And so the pathways are, again, really are the work of the youth around celebrating culture. So a lot of what they talked about is, you know, the beautiful experience they had on tribal journeys, but wanting to be able to do that every day and not just like an event in the summer that they participate in. And so how do we create that pathway? The commitment and consistency. The youth talked about so many, again, these opportunities, they come and go, and they see that in their community. And I think that's a direct, you know, practice of granting and philanthropic work and government funding is that it's cyclical, and you know, there's stops and there's starts and agenda changes. And so how do we create that commitment and consistency to those youth? And then, as it's said in the video, as the youth really, as they learn these things, they take pride and they want to be able to share that back to their, you know, to their peers, to their community. And so how do we create that pathway? And then the last one there, really about working together. It's so interesting, right? Like the 9 nations, and they're again, they have common culture and kinship, but they're really work quite independent of each other, and that's because, again, they have their teachings. snu-WHY-uth is unique. Those families have their own teachings around snu-WHY-uth, but there is, you know, the youth looking at, again, in Photo Voice, we were able to bring them together across the nations, and they wanted more of that ability to gather and collaborate. So again, this is and you'll see in there, we worked with Indigenous Marketing Solution to do the imagery. And so you'll see local berries and our rivers and waterways and mountains, and bringing in the land in that work. And the Nootka flower, which is traditional to the island. And so, and then the eagles there with the canoe, and the importance of that spiritual element of the eagles and the canoe as, as a vessel for doing this work. And so again, we're in this now, and working with communities around what do these pathways look like. So in every kind of initiative that we're collaborating with, how are we incorporating these? And it looks slightly different in each community. And Jeff, maybe I can go back in 2 years and speak more about the application of this. But again, we're just in the beginning inception of that. But if we go to the next slide, I can just this is where I kind of talk about the challenges and opportunities of the work. And I think I was at a forum a couple of years ago, and there was a panel of young people speaking, and it was actually a woman from Palestine, and she this is her quote, but she had said, as Palestine people, we are seen as recipients of service rather than activators of idea and creators of change. And I thought, wow, that to me in that moment was so profound, but also in this work of philanthropy and what we're trying to achieve as Indigenous-led, you can insert Indigenous here. And I think that's been my experience in this work, is that it in conversations with donors and some of the grants that are available, is that it is about, again, the need and that kind of scarcity approach. And I'll give you an example. I was at it's a service club, and they invited 3 groups to come, nonprofits to come and present, and then and it was 100 people in the room, and I didn't know this at the time, but you present and then they vote, and you're sitting there, and they vote, and then they pick which one they're going to give their money to. And the first person to present, her pictures, it was a local service center in town who do great work, but they had an image of a young person looking into an empty fridge. Very powerful. But I was like, and I'm sitting there, I'm going, okay, you win. But so many things, contradictory to that, I think, as for me as an Indigenous person. One is this nature of competitiveness with people that we're doing. Like, I really don't want to approach this work as competitive, because it's all good work. But also the dynamic in that is that I am not going to get up there as an Indigenous-led group representing these nations and show a kid looking into an empty fridge, an Indigenous kid. That's not the perception that, again, we're not looking for handouts. We're coming from a strength-based perspective. And again, not to discredit that work that's being done and that need, but there's a different dynamic. Again, the hierarchy, the race, the gender, all of that comes into play when we present ourselves and how we do that in that good way. So I think I wanted to show this slide because I think this is the systems change work that I think is really critical to particular the foundation. Next slide, please. And so again, I wanted to speak just about, what does that look like to be Indigenous-led community foundation? And it was interesting. I was at the Circle event last week, the Circle on Indigenous Philanthropy. They have an annual gathering, and if anybody's not involved in them, you should be. They do amazing work. And it was great. 3 days of lovely conversation, important conversation. But I was on a panel, and we were chatting about and my colleague, Melissa, who I have great respect for, she said, there's no such thing as Indigenous philanthropy. And I thought, there isn't? Like, oh, I had to wrap my head around that, because I say that quite freely. But, making the point that it's really that place-based, relational, and we really have to avoid kind of that pan-Indian approach to everything we do. And so again, that importance of snu-WHY-uth for us as an Indigenous-led community foundation, really being particular to place-based relations and contacts and honoring that history and those lands. And so, that is an important part of our work, as you can see there. And then being community determined, right? It's again, so much of what is offered. And again, my colleague Melissa there, she says, I don't apply for grants. I don't even bother, because she said, it's not, then I'm I'm under that colonial influence of somebody else telling me what I need and how to do it. And, you know, and again, we're trying to be, and that's been a huge part of our kind of success. It's a small part of it is like the, say the Children Foundation coming to us and saying, this is what, you know, and that's been, that was a lovely collaboration because, you know, there was some kind of containers that they were saying that for their project, but at the same time it fit, it aligned with ours. And so, and that's a beautiful space to kind of go forward in. Again, strength-based, really all my relations approach, it's not just about the here and now and the human world, it's about, you know, we're really, you know, honoring our ancestors and the intergenerational kind of work. And it's not just human form, it's the four-legged ones, the gilled ones, and the winged ones, and the land and the waters, and always being, you know, that's an important, again, part of our practice. And fund development, you know, again, you know, our Indigenous communities are so good at doing their own fundraising. And we see that if there was a fire in one of the communities last year, and immediately there was fundraising happening. And in fact, by the time I got my stuff together to go take, just from my own home and with my family, they were stopped taking donations, and it was just not just only their community, but like the surrounding communities. And so really we see our work around that fund development, around kind of again, the long-term, the sustainable. So if we're going to get to that place of thriving, it's about moving beyond kind of the need in the here and now that is, you know, for the most part, I think, being taken care of, but what's the, you know, creating that longer term pathways and sustainability and thriving. And so it's around then having conversations around what does abundance mean from an Indigenous perspective with donors. What does wealth creation look like? What is wealth extraction? How has that harmed us? How has it continued to harm us? And where is there kind of the edges where we might not engage because of that disalignment in values? And so those are kind of part of that fund development conversations that are critical to Indigenous-led community foundation work. And gifting, you know, I said that we talk about granting. I think we really try to position that in an Indigenous gifting framework, and you know, again, route where it's not just about the transactional mutual exchange. It's about you know, honoring and witnessing and being present to the relationships in that exchange, and in that what does that mean in terms of that relationship with that gift, and how does it grow and deepen, and who again witnesses that work so that it's carried on into the future and known. So it's a lot of conversations around, and again, at the circle, we talked about this intergenerational wealth for intergenerational health. And again, moving from scarcity mindset to one of thriving. And the last one there, it's really then about that sustainability and balance that we're trying to create in the future. And I think that's so critical, that we can show our communities that we can plan beyond the next few years, that we can look into the future and know we'll be okay, know that we will have, that our kids will be looked after, and that they will have these, again, those pathways and those, you know, supported pathways that they can achieve whatever they want to do. And I think that might be, oh, I got one more slide here. I have to, of course, show some of the beautiful faces of some of the youth and children that have been, you know, that we've collaborated with in their communities. You know, again, that's little Trina there, the lacrosse, which is the Indigenous sport. So proud. Look at that smile. You know, she's a rock star in lacrosse. We have support a traditional harvest and hunting program, and so the youth go out and learn gun safety, and then learn how to. Last year, the youth, I think there was 20, and they all shot a deer, and then they learn how to take care of you can tell I'm not a hunter. skin and chop up the meat and redistribute it back to their families and communities. And so, and the elders are so proud to see the youth carrying on that tradition. So that's a lovely picture there. And that picture of Grace. So another place, little small things we can do is, you know, we connected Grace to Uniqlo, I think they're called. They're a Japanese clothing company. And so they wanted, to work with somebody to do a youth in particular to do a shirt for Orange Shirt Day. And so this is Grace's design. She's an amazing talent in Snuw'uy'ulh community. And so she did the design and so her, work was amplified across on a national level. And then again, this is one of the Penelakits dance group doing a welcoming on the waters. And that's it for me. So in terms of my talking, hopefully, and hopefully might have some questions for me or just enter into conversation about the work.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing all that. All those pictures make me really miss living in that territory. I love the island so much. It's incredible. But yeah, I'd like to welcome anybody. If you'd like to unmute yourself, ask a question or type it in the chat or put up your hand and then we can go to you. Again, welcome any sort of conversation or questions for Sharon about their work. Yeah, Wanda.
Thank you, Sharon. I was trying to find put up your hand and I can never find it on this. So Nyawankawa, Sharon, for that. Everything resonated for me. I really appreciated your colleagues' context on there is no such thing as Indigenous philanthropy. It's always how do you introduce what we do within the larger ecosystem, and that sometimes that language is the easiest way. But I see where she's thinking about going with what does that mean for community health. I have a question, more of a technical question. I really find it interesting what you feel is the as an Indigenous-led community foundation, what do you feel as though the CFC helps or facilitates or gravitates to? Because I get that question actually twice. Should we become a part of CFC? Should we become a part of the community, the more technical community foundation? I just wanted to get any thoughts on that I could share back.
Yeah, that is a very good question. And, and to be honest, it's one that I continue to have with CFC. Because I think in the beginning, when we became part of them, there was so much opportunity for peer networking and for kind of maybe the technical, like you say, the CRA of the rules and regulations and helping me navigate that aspect, which was valuable. But then as I grew and started seeing the distinctions, for the work that we were doing, I started to kind of pose that question back to them, like how, because some of the templates, again, it's always been my experience in wherever career pathway is to, you enter into these spaces of Indigenous-led, and then you maybe, as we're learning to take and assert it in our way, we sometimes try the Western templates, and then we're like, oh, we got to shed that, or that doesn't work for us. And so that was kind of part of the process. And so then we have to go back and say, what does this look like for us? And so then I was kind of sharing that with them and saying, so what is then your role in supporting the 4 Indigenous-led community foundations, specifically in terms of not only our development, the technical and that, but also in amplifying our work? Because I think what we're doing has something to offer the broader sector. And so, they have peer net gatherings, and so it's like there's peers in terms of the grant, again, the jobs, the EDs, the finance people. And so, yeah, I think we're still working on that. I think there has been some value in their access to some granting streams that we can flow through us as part of that network that has brought some really well needed programs to our communities that we've benefited from. But I'd say it's still in progress in terms of trying to determine, and they're open to the conversation again, like what does this look like? And yeah, so.
Thank you for that. That's what I thought, but I totally agree that there is that reciprocality opportunity that isn't just good for Indigenous-led, but it's good for everybody, right? Like the
Exactly.
approaches and, UMNOA that they're doing their Inuit philanthropy, which is really incredible and amazing. And then the last thing I wanted to share, PFC, if you haven't noticed, I'm going to send you a little email that they are in their efforts of truth and reconciliation in the 10 years. Any Indigenous-led foundation, you can have a membership to the Philanthropic Foundations of Canada for like, it's gratis, it's free, it's part of their way of practicing inclusivity in philanthropy. So I'll send that to you on the site.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We actually just joined, so.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, but I thank you. Somebody else brought that to my attention. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, so thank you.
So you'll be in Winnipeg next fall?
Hopefully.
Right. Thanks for the question and the conversation, Wanda. I see Alex has his hand up.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Jeff. Sharon, thank you very much for that presentation and the video. It's so interesting. My question is around the youth engagement and just maybe sharing just some thought perspective of that. How to get the youth engaged, and they're not so much the how, but I guess no, just the nature of youth is just so special, unique, and they're very wary of when adults come around with opportunities, and certainly with the opportunity to open up and share and give thought and perspective. So I guess what's the unique considerations that you carried around the youth engagement, and also is there anything in particular that they presented as a challenge?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, just making note of that. I think the unique considerations for us was around, again, I think rather than drawing in youth to yet another kind of form of engagement, just going to where the youth were. And so again, recognizing that, so the Manach, the youth that were involved with the Photo Voice Project, there was 3 canoe families, into 4 canoe families. So again, so they'd been participating, and so we went to those families to see if they would be interested. And so I think that really worked for us. And then Charsene was one of the speakers there in the gray hoodie. So she is a very dynamic and great with youth, and so we brought her on board because again, you need somebody who can kind of fill that, like engage in that space.
Thank you.
And dynamic,
yes.
and so that was another key place for us. And then we figured out, like, how do we honor their time? And so, and I know this is getting a bit controversial, even not controversial, but I don't know what the word is. It's a point of conversation with the Kw'umut Lelums, like the work that we're doing across Kw'umut Lelum Child and us is like, how do you ensure that we honor youth's time when we're asking something of them, so it's not extraction, but also not making sure that we, ensure that there's the principle of giving back and time, and, and not, what we call it here is a handshake, and sometimes it's like the kind of the elders are worried, well, we don't want the youth to always want their hand out for everything we ask of them. So I think those are some of the unique kind of considerations that we hold in that work. And then the challenges that the youth brought up, particularly through these conversations. Is that specifically the question?
Yeah, general, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I think the youth really, the biggest takeaway that we, had in the conversation with them is around as they, you know, as we host, we as in organizations, communities, these spaces and places for youth to engage and learn culture and learn about their cultural identity, is that they, again, want to be able then to, they don't want to be just, again, serviced or given they want to be able to then show that they can give back and share, bring forward those teachings that they're learning. And that I thought that was, I don't know why that was, I think, really eye-opening for me, is that recognizing that how we talk about youth engagement and building capacity, but yet do we give them this, the space then to
Yeah.
showcase,
100%.
amplify, their talents. And so I think that was something that they presented back as a challenge that's still sitting with me.
Yeah, we'll go on. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, that's our same big concern here on the east. I'm from Kahnawake and Yakahaga territory, and we talk about engaging youth and and to do it in a real good way. And we always seem to fall short. And we have to recognize that we have to bring the youth in en masse because they are comfortable being together. It's very intimidating for one or two to walk into a room full of adults and then be told, "Speak, tell us what's on your mind, tell us how you want to transform." Things. Hey, it can be very intimidating, but to give them the opportunity to come with collective voice, but also to then acknowledge their maturity and recognize that they are contributing citizens to the community, the clan, the tribe, the nation. That's so significant at these young ages because we still have that tendency to push past them, except for the special projects that come up and these opportunities that then give them a safe space to be who they want to be and to speak what they need to speak. So thank you for sharing that piece of it particularly, and congratulations on the good work. Continued success.
Thank you. No, you said it very well. And I think that I just would add to that I think what I see too is, to your point, is that when youth are given that opportunity or make space, take that opportunity, like there is this whole generation of youth that are unapologetically Indigenous. And that sounds, I know that might sound not good, but in terms of like when I grew up, I
think it's great.
I was kind of like, like figuring it out, like, oh, because, like I look white but I was very much grew up with my culture. So I was always like trying to figure out and apologizing for whether I was too, and I think some of them are just so clear in their identity and what they can offer and learning, like presenting their language, presenting themselves and, in these political movements. And it's just, it's amazing to see that generation taking, asserting themselves in that way. And it gives us hope, right? I think.
Right on.
Gives me hope. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. Sharon. Anybody else have any questions or comments you'd like to share?
Yeah. Amazing. And sometimes I think our work is then, seeing the capacity in them before they're able to, like when I worked in post-secondary for years, so many of the youth would come in and, with their hoodies on and like they'd come into our gathering places and they'd be in the corner, just trying to be invisible, right? Just trying to blend into the wall. And then, you kind of just tap them on the shoulder and just kind of invite them to participate and engage. And, and if you can create those opportunities for them and kind of see that potential in them before they can, then they start to, to see it in themselves. And that's the best part, when they walk across the stage and they're like proud of, like they're in their regalia and their families in the audience and they're drumming and, but they have that part. It's just, that's the best transformation, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we don't have any more questions or comments. So I'd like to just thank you again, Sharon, for joining us and sharing everything, and everybody for joining in and listening and participating. And thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you all. Have a good day, folks.
Thank you. Toiksip
Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Nice to meet you, Awanda.
Nice to meet you too.
We'll see you in person someday.
Great. Great.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate all your help.
Problem, Sharon. Thanks so much. It was
Okay.
a presentation.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks.